This is my new kit, Cynthia's Diamond. They are named after my dear friend Cynthia Lott. At the moment, she is in the hospital from a very bad fall. These are the two candle mats. Lots of love. This is another kit that I have. Both are in the one kit. I have a video for the candle mats that's very in-depth, shows step-by-step everything. And the diamond mat is identical to this, except it has more rows. The process is exactly the same to use it and stitch it. Your kit will come with actually a photo and instructions. The instructions will be brief, but I'm going to timestamp the candle mat video where everything is done in detail, so that if you want to go back and check something, you can and not watch the entire video. The rows are packaged. Center row, center, second row, third row, fourth row, fifth row, and the last row. The last row is very important because you do not stitch that or glue it until you cut your base. The base will come folded with lines. These are your guidelines, horizontal and vertical. Pennies go one touching the other from each row, every one a different color this way. This way, in order to make the diamond shape, you have 2 pennies and another penny the same color. 2, another penny, 2, another penny, and so on for this row. Now, it is your choice, but I would suggest for this kit that you iron your wool when you get it and do some basting stitches in a darker color so that you can see them. These are just your guidelines to make sure that you're not going off. Actually, with both of these kits, it's not absolutely important. The thing you need to remember is just interlock your pennies, scrunch them up, make them touch each other. And the threads are not included. I suggest for this one you would need floss, just regular floss. The thread that I use, that I dye my string, because these pennies are so small, they are little tiny button pennies, and then the 1-inch penny. Because they're so small, you really shouldn't use a thick thread. You're just going to have too much thread in the design. As to color, I go over this in the other video, but you just make sure that there are no colors in your rug that are the same size. The reason being, if you stitch the same color thread to the same color penny, it's going to look invisible. You're not going to notice it, and it's not going to pop. This is a very nice stitch. The all-over stitch, that would look really, really nice with this rug. But of course you can use blanket stitch, you can use your cross stitch ones, any type of stitch that you would like to use. The next that you do is I would suggest you glue your pennies. You can use pins. These are the little applique pins, that would work fine. You can glue the top one if you find that difficult to do with a stick pin. And then you can just use your regular pen or one of these to pen the bottom row. The next part of the video, I'll just very lightly touch on the glue, and I have detailed instructions in the candle mat kits for that, and I will lightly touch on how to cut. How to cut to have an open edge penny, which is what this is. It looks like they're floating. This is what happens on the back, and we're going to show how to cut this in the next part of the video. Next steps, and I should mention when I was showing you the kits, if you'd like to do just the top pennies by stitching, do each bag and then put them back in the bag. If you do your pennies and then just put them in a bowl like this, with the top penny stitched, it's going to be a bit difficult to put this back together again. So put them in the bags. Even if you are going to stitch your second penny without glue, I would suggest that you put them back in, and then you can just add row by row and then start stitching. A little bit of overview on the glue. What I'm using is Elmer's School Glue. It's just the white glue, very cheap dollar store. In the other videos, I have used a Q-tip. I happen to have dollar store paintbrushes now, artist brushes. I just clipped this one off a little so that it's a bit stubby. Do remember to keep them in water. You'll ruin them if you don't. And I have saran wrap over my plate, easy to dispose of. Just a very little bit of glue on the top penny. You do not want globs of glue, very thick places of glue, because it's going to be difficult for your needle to get in. By all means, use whatever glue that you're comfortable with. I like this because I can see it. It's just very light. Even that might be a little too much. You put it on your penny, press down, and continue with all of your top pennies like that. Something that I, for some reason, neglected to remember in any videos that I've done, it's just I took it for granted. I was a quilter before I started my penny mat. And if you do a quilt, you know, as you stitch, you press, stitch, press. What would happen if you stitch the whole quilt top without doing that pressing? It just wouldn't work. It would be difficult. It would draw on the bars, of course, but as far as precise stitching, it would be difficult. And this is what I do with my rugs. I iron my wool multiple times. Before it's cut into pennies, it gets ironed. After the pennies are cut and I put a kit together, I set my kit out. If I was doing one kit, this would be set out. So I make sure I have all the colors very nice. And then I would press it with the iron. I would suggest that you press yours, press the base, because I do have the lines in the base. Press that. And also, after you glue your pennies, press them. It does make a difference. Just give it a try and see how you like it. I've been doing that for years for all of my mats, and it just never occurred to me that no one else does, or maybe some people do. Just regular masking tape, dollar store variety. This is why you need the guidelines. And I'm not sure if this will come in close. All of your pennies should be in a row touching, and those are pretty good. You don't need an absolute exact, but it's good. Then, how to measure. This is what you do with any open penny type mat, depending on whatever size. This just happens to be a 1 inch. Where the pennies touch, absolute center touch, that's where you put your mark. You can see that. There's my mark. These are my lines that I have now drawn with my ruler. This is my cutting line, and I will do the same. Now, make sure that your tape goes over your cross pieces so that you have your ends to cut. And I will show you a bit of a trick, another thing that I've learned from doing these videos. Once it's cut, what do you do? After you have the tape marked and cut, then you just have to remove it. I just left a little piece here to do that, but be very gentle when you remove the tape. And this is why you do not need expensive tape. If you find your tape sticks too much, it should be just very lightly to come off. So put it on an extra piece of wool, put it on your clothing or something like that to get the sticky off. It just needs to be very lightly to come off, just enough to catch in order to mark. What happens if you do make a mistake? Maybe your pennies are off-centered, you didn't put them touching. It's very simple. You just use plain water and you wet your penny. This one is glued. This one I previously did with water, and it comes apart. And you can reposition it, you can use it again. Just remember that the water will loosen the glue so that you can adjust. The glue is still going to be on those pennies. It's not as bad, but you can see the glue is still there and you can feel a hard spot. We're going to finish the rug now. I have a couple pennies to put in. Now, normally when you do the pennies, you do it in the center for the little ones. Very little glue, not much at all. To do these, yes, you do in the center because you're probably, if you're doing blanket stitches, it's outside. If you're doing your other stitch, it's won't be in the center of your, it'll be in the center of this one, but not of this one. So what you do is on the outside row, the last row, and by the way, I do get fuzz on both the Q-tips and the brush, so you're only putting a little piece in. So you don't start in the center, you do the edge. Not a lot. You see the fuzzy things that are coming there? They stay on your brush. And then make sure that goes here and not out here. Just double check that. And then just scoot it in. Press down. I'll just finish this one up quickly. As little glue as possible, and absolutely remember, you do not need glue for the second row. Those are 1-inch pennies. You can use stick pins. I would suggest that you start with a few rows, stitch, add another few rows. Even if you are using glue, this is doing the whole rug in glue just because I'm not going to stitch it for one reason, and I need to take photos. The other is it's just for demonstration purposes. It certainly doesn't have to be constructed that way. Okay, I'm going to have to put a little tiny bit on this penny. Just a very little bit. Put it on. And then we're only doing the little piece, so keep your glue on the edge. This only applies to the outside row, the last row in your package, named last row. And we scoot that in. There. Now I'm not sure if those are going to stick right away, but we'll give it a try. The other thing, and this is just something that just came to me doing these videos, with a octagon or something like that, you have quite a nice point here. With the diamond, because of the extra pennies and the elongated shape, you just have a little bit here to hold that penny. Now I should mention, before you glue this outside edge, you certainly may blanket stitch or whatever stitch you're doing on here. I would suggest that you do it after you glue the pennies. Why? Because you have your pennies to stitch to. You're not going to have gaps. So it will be stitched through all the wool. So that's the very, very last thing to do. However, with these little tiny points, they're difficult to stitch. You know, when we do the points, they're difficult. So I'm going to give you extra pennies, and you can just, let's see if I can put that down and do it. You can just stitch your extra pennies for little feet. Let's put this over a bit. Just little tiny feet on the outside edge. Okay. This one doesn't need to be here. You'll just have something on that point in case you're not absolutely good with those points to make your stitches. But it looks good. And of course you would stitch those down in whatever blanket stitch or your stitch that you are going to do. And that is it, except for every step of the way, I use my iron, my heat, and steam. Just as if, as I suggested, I was making a quilt. Everything I do, every part, is pressed. Once you have your stitches on, you do not press. At least for my way of doing things. The reason is it's too heavy, and the steam. Even a heavy iron, maybe with a pressing cloth, it's still the same thing. It puts your stitches down, and you don't want your stitches down. You want your pennies to be not thick, which is why you do that. But once the thread is on, what I like to do is I just take, again, water, just plain water, and I wet the back, and then I press with my hands, just plain water. It's not as strong a weight by just pressing with your hands. The water will take out wrinkles, that sort of thing. Once I do the back, I turn it over and I lightly water the front. Not soaking, actually you would put this on a towel or something. Not soaking, just damp. You can spritz it perhaps, I don't, but that's a good idea I suppose. Then I do the same thing, just a gentle press when it's stitched. And then I just put it aside and let it air dry, and it's finished. This is, let's see if I can move my camera, but this is amazing to be able to have that hold together like that with no side effects, nothing showing for glue, and easy to stitch. That's absolutely amazing. This is my first time ever to do these with the two kits. Just remember, these are both on my website for a while. How long, I don't know. Until I run out, which I don't have very many. Lots of love. 2 candle mats in 1 kit. Cynthia's Diamond, the size. And do remember, you add the thread. You make your design with thread, and we design the rug together. Thank you very much for watching. My website is oldpennyrugs.com. It will be in the comments and in the video notes. Do remember, there is a video for these, and I go into great detail about everything. And I will link that, and I also have them time-stamped. So thank you very much, and happy stitching.